We have here with us today Aseel Yaqoub, a young artist from Kuwait, and Dr. Farah Al-Nakib, an associate professor from the UK. Each will be presenting about Kuwait from Kuwait's golden era, or what others would call the modern era, feeds into present national identity. How through collective memory and national nostalgia, the past is not remembered per se, but stipulated. Specific stories are told that shape our understanding of how the past happened, with the obvious help of visuals that help solidify the memory in our minds. There are a few dangers here that we will be discussing. The first being that our past is being misconstrued. Specific aspects of our heritage are being purposely erased from our history books, while others are being revived and emphasized. Another growing issue is, given our young demographic, more and more of us haven't experienced the past or the golden era, so we're much more susceptible and vulnerable to believing and espousing identities that are sort of being given to us. And finally, with the main issue being capitalism, how phenomena such as branding and tourism, and more generally the economy and profit, are impacting our cultural heritage, identity, and our landscape. We have here with us today Aseel Yaqoub, a young artist from Kuwait, and Dr. Farah Al-Nakib, an associate professor from the UK. Each will be presenting about Kuwait from a specific angle, Aseel through her artworks, and Doctora Farah from her research and from her PhD and her books. So, start with Aseel.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Taibah, for the introduction. And I would like to thank Abu Dhabi Arts, especially Mira Saeed, for asking us to speak here today. And for all of you for being interested in such a niche topic. Okay, great. The nation can be looked at in a couple of ways. We can enter the nation's national consciousness and explore the image its citizens have of their country, or investigate the nation's perceived or actual international image and world opinion. Together, they negotiate national identity. But is there one national identity, and if so, how is its uniqueness emphasized when international differences are overlooked? All national identities are manufactured and essentially socially constructed. It is a collective product formed through socialization, which is then rooted into the nation's history. This presentation is somewhat of a performative lecture vis-a-vis my own work. Bear with me as I ask a lot of questions during my backward search to find forward meaning. The name on my passport is Aseel Ahmed Saadoun Jassim Yaqoub. Ahmed is my father, Saadoun is my grandfather, and Jassim is my great-grandfather. This synonym of citizenship is the driving force of my artistic practice. My national lineage dates back to the 1800s, before Kuwait was even legitimized as a nation. Although Kuwait gained its independence in 1961, my great-grandfather was still a Kuwaiti. This is because a collective's narrative is not defined by official history, but by shared memories sustained through legacy. What about national nostalgia, and how does it influence our national identity? My fascination with nostalgia began in this house. It is a contemporary typical house in Kuwait, however, in it is a special room that has been recreated to look like a traditional Kuwaiti mud house. This room's purpose is to transport the resident back in time, a reinvented space that aims to mimic the architecture of the past. We felt inclined to set up a narrative in this theatrical space and to play pretend. The story is superficial and uses tradition as a basis for cultural recollection. The past is portrayed in black and white. A family sit to eat lunch with their hands, traditionally. After lunch, the radio is switched on and Kulthum's voice coos the lyrics to her song Fakkaruni. At this point, the son is anxiously waiting for his parents to leave the room. Finally alone, he mimics his father by reading his newspaper and drinks from his remaining coffee. He reaches out past the borders of the image and magically pulls out a record. Intrigued by Western sounds of Presley's kissing cousins, the son attempts to dance the twist. The sound of prayer interrupts in the background, alarming the boy to stop the music as his father awakens. Father and son pray together, and the film transforms into the colored present. Kissing Cousins was made to question the authenticity of our post-oil cultural identity. It became my gateway into this continuous time-traveling exploration. I saw in this space a common trivial misconception of our past culture in a time of modernity. The imagined nostalgia in the film was not based on historical actuality, but on the retelling of the past by means of constructing different memories, narratives, and fantasies. Shouldn't one understand who we are and what we have become in order to position ourselves within the narratives of the past? How can one do so when there is an increasing mistrust of official history? I wasn't taught Kuwait's national history in school, and as I grew older and as technology became more informative, I found myself astounded by what I didn't know. I began to position myself somewhere in the middle of the nation's timeline, working myself forwards and backwards from there. If one stands, let's say, at the edge of 1920 and looks beyond that time marker, history feels endless. Where does one begin, and when does one decide when to stop looking back? Imagine a herd of tribal settlers approaching. You allow them to settle on a land of great history. Below you are layers of empires established by the Mesopotamians that pile below the Islamic Caliphate. The merchant settlers elect a tribe to protect this territory. They build dhow ships to pearl dive and fish on. They build mud houses and abandon their caravans. Their land transforms into a trading port bustling with merchandise and people. Its autonomous nature intrigues the Ottomans and the British. They begin to bicker on either side of you. You observe as the ruler of this land toys with them. A new flag is raised in front of you. The Ottoman emblem is gone, and the land you stand on is now a British protectorate. Begin nation formation. Let us pause here what could be an introduction to a board game to contemplate this moment in time, my great-grandfather's lifetime. Sometimes history is so linear, it is a literal line, and that line was named Sykes-Picot. In 1916, the French and British secretly divided this region into two spheres of influence. This line effectively partitioned the Ottoman Arab provinces into areas of British and French control. This line defined the map that spawned a century of resentment, for lines beget more lines. 4 years later, in 1920, a battle between two tribes ensued over the Kuwait-Najd boundary. It became a pivotal moment in Kuwait's history, the Battle of Jahra. Through a series of letters, telegrams, and notes found on the British archives, I began following this dispute between Saudi Arabian King Ibn Saud and Sheikh Salim al-Sabah of Kuwait. Needing to simplify all this information, I staged a WhatsApp group conversation between the regional British political agents with Sheikh Salim al-Sabah and King Abdulaziz Ibn Saud. Video, please. 30% of the text is quote-unquote, and the attached images are all from the archives. John Moore gives accounts of the Battle of Jahra with urgent texts on a separate private group conversation excluding the sheikhs and king. Eventually, the British protectorate, decide to bomb and disperse the attacking Ikhwan tribe to protect Kuwait from Najd. On this children's table is an overlay of 5 maps dating from the Sykes-Picot map and Percy Cox's final outlines of Kuwait 2 years after the Battle of Jahra. The chairs are assigned to the political agents involved in what seems to have initiated the red pen onto the paper. This defining moment, the Uqair Protocol, defined the boundaries between Iraq, Najd, and Kuwait. Sheikh Salim al-Sabah was not permitted any role in the outcome during the meeting between Ibn Saud and Percy Cox. In turn, Kuwait lost more than 2/3 of its territory and is still being challenged at its modern borders. So much for being a protectorate, huh? This was why I found it quite fitting to showcase this installation north of the line at the French Institute in Kuwait. Regardless of the circumstances, a nation is formed and has come into being. It is defined, named, and ready for the process of nation building. Let us begin constructing and structuring national identity. Allow the British to draw a small nation with a red pen. Call it Kuwait. Turn a merchant-elected tribe into rulers of an emirate. Call the leader Emir. Replace the flag with a new design. Keep it fresh. Call the British to help extract oil. Sell lots of oil. Import architects and urban planners. Bonus points if they're Scandinavian. Demolish existing mud wall borders to make room for infrastructure. Fill the gaps with highways. Literally. We are about to enter my grandfather's era. Kuwait was once a humble coastal town surrounded and protected by a gated mud wall. That very same wall was built a few weeks after the Battle of Jahra. As the nation-state ushered its transition towards modernity, a series of acquired master plans transformed Kuwait's physical and social environment. The plan called for the demolition of Old Kuwait to pave way for a new state capital. The wall was demolished and only 5 gates remain today. They have recently been revived as pastiches of a recent past. Whatever a nation chooses to memorialize in physical monument is an indicator of the collective memory. This revival is meant to enhance the nation's ability to make the past work for present aims. How is this possible if craftsmanship is not revived in parallel? How can we renovate adobe structures with concrete and paint? I find the line between old and new increasingly hard to draw, as is the definition of cultural value. Heritage Wall number 6 is my allegory of national heritage. The wall stands freely at an angle in the middle of a white room as though it was built first. It is a deceptive reflection of its surroundings, revealing the immaturity of its construction. A handicapped chair leans against this authoritative structure, balancing a reserved plaque on its lap. Its weathered appearance, physical dysfunction, and dependence on the structure reflect on social dependency and reconstructions of national collective memory. It took me 2 weeks to build this wall with my own hands, only to ironically demolish it after 3 days. Like the nation-state, all I am left with are photographs of the past. But isn't that enough? The force of the photographic image is derived from its powerful capacity to represent the real. Often, photography aids to recall past events so effectively that photographs become the primary markers of memory itself. Modern culture's capacity to freeze, replay, and store visual memories for the masses, facilitated by museums, television archives, and other visual data banks, has enhanced our cultural practice. Why rebuild what is destroyed when we have images as evidence? Let us continue nation building. Tear down mud houses, replace with incongruous mansions. Create foundations in the form of heritage institutions and cultural festivals. Infuse nationalism and patriotism into the citizens and distribute the wealth. Produce cultural tradition. Invoke old memories. Gain the nostalgia is power perk. We have now entered a period of prosperity driven by oil and its liberal atmosphere, and it is called the Golden Era. It's my father's era. How can we experience this moment if we haven't lived it? Images help us remember the past by freezing its representation at a powerful moment already known to us. Propaganda images on postage stamps, however, is of a more subdued and discreet nature than that exhibited by other media. Yet the fact that the postage stamp is widely circulated with no obvious message enhances its peculiar effectiveness. It is a symbol of the nation from which the stamp is mailed, a vivid expression of that country's culture and of its ideas and ideals. I began collecting postage stamps from the peak of Kuwait's golden era. Upon studying these images, a melancholic feeling began to spur inside me. Is this nostalgia? How can I be nostalgic to a time in which I did not exist? I began to research my symptoms, as most of us do on Google these days, and realized that I was suffering from Zenzicht. I was experiencing a yearning for an ideal alternative experience, intensely missing and longing for a time. I began developing symptoms of utopian conceptions of ideal development. Nostalgia for me is a critical tool, not the longing for the past. So I began destroying the stamps and then reassembled the layers, altering the national artifact and image with my own narrative. I felt inclined to change the goal of these images to call on the continuity of history. The magnifying domes expand on this reinvented moment in time, for one of the best means of explaining change is to trace the course of events by which it came about. By literally tracing these images with a scalpel, I reminded myself that these utopic images were never achievable. Design a constitution and let the people vote in a parliament. Give out free healthcare, free education, and voting rights. Build a parliament building. Bonus points if a Scandinavian designs it. Call yourself a semi-democracy. Encourage neoliberalism, which is going to end the golden era. Memory works through the various vehicles that give collectives a sense of their past. Different vehicles of memory offer different ways of making sense of the past. So if memory vehicles can clarify our past, can they also influence us using the past? Emotional and sentimental value can be commodified indirectly, and nostalgia has become a popular marketing tool. Since 1978, Tahya Juice was a popular hangout in Kuwait. Young men and women would park their cars outside the little shop, honk their horns, and order a very sweet heartbreaker. It is situated in a posh residential area and was this place to be seen and to see for a while. The adverts, can we play? This is sort of a revival ad with no sound. The advert successfully infiltrated and ignited the collective's memory and repositioned its identity as a brand and national landmark. Our collective psyche is strongly influenced by advertising selling us nostalgia. The use of nostalgia and its overbearing legitimacy in popular culture has led to a shift in public perception against new technologies and improvements. On my trips back and forth from New York to Kuwait, I was endlessly bombarded with HSBC's world ads at the airports. Their posters applied the theme of ambition to show the audience how it can come in various shapes and sizes. If we can use memories to increase sales, can we convert emotional and sentimental value into money? Using HSBC's language and inspired by the concept of ambition and nostalgia, I devised my own bank with a niche service. It is unlike any other bank you have seen. There are a million ways of dreaming for a better future and to holding on to the past. How you choose to move forward is bound to be delayed by someone's attachment to what is left behind. At the Bank of Collective Memory, we see this through millions of customers every single day. There are a lot of views on what must go and what must stay. The world would be a dull place indeed if we agreed on everything. That is why we believe in mixing the best of both worlds. So let us manage the past whilst you make your way to the future. Invest your memories with us. If the past becomes too appealing, what is to stop us from pursuing the regression to that apparently better time? The 1970s in Kuwait left many private individuals with substantial funds at their disposal. These funds culminated in a small crash in 1977. The government responded through bailouts and introduced stricter regulations. However, this unintentionally contributed to a far larger stock market crash in the 1980s. Small risk companies were driven into the technically illegal alternate market called Souk al-Manaf. A house of cards collapsed, prompting a recession that rippled through society. Coupled with the reduced oil revenues caused by the Iran-Iraq war at the time, the crash helped to push the entire Gulf region into a recession. Good times. This is one way of ending a golden era, but we begin a new era. Rebuild what you accidentally destroyed. Cheaply renovate what still remains. Or just build new structures that look like the architecture of the past. Allow freedom of speech to a certain extent, censor what you are unsure of, heavily invest in new forms of cultural institution, prepare an escape plan in case all fails. Continue nation building. When looking to the past, don't we tend to more vividly remember the pleasurable experiences and forget the painful ones? Isn't it crucial to distinguish between wistful memories of grandma's kitchen and belief in a prior state of cultural perfection? If nostalgia can be commodified, then can't it be easily weaponized by propagandists? Aren't we tired of being faced with yet another global epidemic of golden era rhetoric? This is our lifetime, and we might be experiencing the platinum era but wouldn't even know it. Thank you.
So the title of my talk today is Worthy of Admiration, which is a quote that I'm going to be explaining in the talk, a case for Kuwait's forgotten modernity. In 1960, James Bond author Ian Fleming visited Kuwait to research an article for a series he wrote for the Times on the world's thrilling cities. His fascination with the place produced a full unpublished book manuscript that aimed to document, quote, an extremely exaggerated social and economic phenomenon in a remote part of the world, and to try and catch this phenomenon and pin it down at this crucial stage. The moment when Kuwait is emerging from adolescence to maturity, and before the chaos and drama of its birth pangs have been tidily swept away, end quote. This crucial stage he refers to, full of excitement, chaos, and drama, is commonly known in popular discourse as Kuwait's golden era. State discourse at the time also referred to it as Kuwait's modern era, which is a phrase that I prefer to use than the golden era. These were the 3 decades